Fellow tennis nerds, welcome to this Tecnifibre TF40 1619 305 gram 2024 review. This is how long racket names get, and when you've done this for a long time, you have to test all the different generations. A new version of the TF40, it's the third generation. This is a racket I've always liked since it came out. Only came out in 1820, but now they have more and more models because it is a popular one. Tecnifibre, they have been making strides, I must say, in the racket production. I think the rackets are excellent. T-Fight and TF40. The TFX1 is maybe the one where I'm not a super fan, but otherwise they're very good rackets, as is the case with this new TF40. But of course we have to get into what is really new compared to the previous generation, because otherwise you can just go out and buy that at a cheaper price and save some money and still get an excellent racket, because I did really like the previous generation. But there are a few tweaks to this frame, so let's get into it. What are the competitors for this TF40 and who is it for? This is a control racket, very much in the line of rackets like Wilson Blade 98, Head Radical, MP, Dunlop CX200, maybe even a Yonex Percept, although that's 97 square inches, this is 98. Kind of a modern control racket. You don't go all the way to that low-powered prestige feel. You're really getting a little bit more on the ball, and I think that is welcome in today's tennis when there's a lot more power, spin on all levels, pretty much thanks to rackets and strings, and yeah, players getting stronger as well on all levels. So the TF40 is kind of a blade competitor, foam filled, has a few technologies, but really nothing new. They talk about RS Sharp Beam, the beam design, Dynacore XT. This is kind of marketing lingo that you don't really need to care so much about. They haven't changed the layup in a huge way. They made it a little bit stiffer, which in this case I think is good. So if you compare the RA rating, which you shouldn't put too much attention to, but a little bit, the stiffness is a tad higher. Doesn't mean it's harsh or uncomfortable, but you get a bit more pop on the ball and a little bit more stability. So for me, that's a thumbs up. They've also increased the swing weight, which I think is good. Generally with Tecnifibre rackets, the swing weight is pretty high, and that's something perhaps due to the foam. We've seen that with Angel rackets and other brands that do foam-filled rackets. The swing weight can differ a bit and tend to be on the higher side. So foam does really improve like stability and gives you kind of more of a cushioned feel, a little bit better comfort, but there's obviously not as easy to get the quality control when you have foam filled rackets. That's what I heard from a racket engineer. So that might be the reason. I prefer the higher swing weight on the TF40. The 1619 TF40 I tested last time had a pretty low swing weight. I felt like I needed to add weight on that one, even though I liked it a lot. This 1619 comes in already with a 330 strung swing weight, so around 300 unstrung, and I think that's great. I think that's really helped the racket to become even more of a weapon, because it's supposed to be giving you some power and some spin despite it being more of a control line. I think that is generally what you expect from more modern rackets these days. So a few tweaks in the layup and the swing weight of this racket, but not a huge change. If you want to save money, I generally recommend you going for the older model unless there's a huge change in mold. It all depends, but generally you can save some money if the mold is the same and there's not a huge layup change. And layup, as you might know, is what's going on inside the racket, like if it's softer, if it's stiffer, if they've tweaked some of the feel, while the mold is the structure of the frame, meaning it might be, you know, a wider shape or a narrow shape, etc, etc. So this case, it's the same mold as far as I can see, and close to the previous generation, but a few modifications which I thought were actually good things. So for me, I would probably, even since I'm a crazy racket guy, still splurge on the new one. But obviously you can save money and tweak the older one a bit as well. So depends. If you want to buy 3-4 rackets, the savings on the older version is pretty good, I would say. Anyway, the specs as you have them here: unstrung balance, unstrung swing weight, and stiffness 66. That means that the stiffness is around 69 without strings. You add strings to the racket, the stiffness drops 3 points approx. And beam width similar to a blade, 21.5 millimeters. That's usual for these control rackets that are a bit more modern, giving you a bit more. Prestiges are getting a little bit less popular these days, as you need more help, unless you're really like an old school guy. which I tend to be as well, but now I'm transitioning more towards the modern frame as well. Balance not so headlight, so there's room to add some weight in the handle for you who want a bit more whippiness in the head. I tend to recommend that. Adding weight in the handle doesn't really bump up the swing weight, so generally a good idea if that's the kind of specification you like. But I thought this played absolutely nice in stock form, did not need to tweak it one bit, so really happy with it straight away. Mine was pretty much spot on to the specs here. I was lucky, sometimes we are unlucky. I hope sometimes you can use the warranty if you get a spec that is really outside the ±7 grams and the balance point, because this can really be a headache for tennis players worldwide. But everything was spot on in terms of specs. I like what they did. They didn't change any technology that I've seen, and sometimes the technology stuff is a bit of marketing, blah blah blah, as you know. Most importantly then, how does it play? What's the performance and playability? I really fell kind of in love with this racket in a way. I really like this one. I actually use it already in match play. It's one of those rackets that feels right at home. From the first hit, I've been a fan of this line, and it kind of slots straight into my wheelhouse of rackets with like a bit more modern control approach. So for me, this was a win. I tend to gravitate towards 1820, but now a little bit of help over the net, especially that I'm playing more on clay, helps. And there's not like a crazy launch, but you can get a bit more lift on your shots, helping when you're like running and trying to hit like a passing shot, for example. Easier to create angles. But if you're an 1820 kind of player, then that's an option as well. They have that as well. So, but for me, this was 1619. You could, of course, go for the 315 gram version. They have all these options. 315, you will have more weight in the handle, but the swing weight will be the same. That could have been as good for me. Not being so sensitive with like the weight in the handle thing. I am more of a swing weight guy. Like the swing weight is very important for me, and the 330 swing weight is my sweet spot and my spec. So generally I like to bump up a little bit of weight in the handle, get it up to like 340 grams strung and around 32 centimeter balance. That's 6 points head light and 330 strung swing weight. That's my kind of go-to spec, which I use for tournaments. And this was easy to get it into this spec. It was kind of close to that already. And that's why I've been using it in match play, and I don't have much to complain about. There are a few pros and cons with Tecnifibre rackets. They do feel very stable with the foam. That really helps. I did like the increased swing weight, gives me more power, and makes the racket feel a little bit more like a weapon, like a solid racket. Like I like a high swing weight, at least 330. And the stiffness gives you the pop that you need. The racket is whippy enough still, despite the swing weight. It feels kind of fast. Very nice on serve. You got very good power on the serve for this type of control racket. It does add a bit more power than rackets like the Blade or the Radical, which for me was a good thing. But it's still within that wheelhouse of a controlled string pattern and controlled string bed. You don't have any crazy launches or, you know, hot spots in the string bed where the ball just goes a little bit more than you'd expect based on your swing, right? So all that really worked for me. You know, from the control side to the power side, I felt it was pretty balanced. Not too muted where you can't hit like a drop shot, you don't know where it's going. So I felt that was pretty easy as well. I felt like they really nailed this one. The TF40 has been something I've always been interested in playing, but I feel like this is the best one so far. Subtle tweaks that made it just better. There are a few cons, but those are mainly things you can solve. So for me personally, the grip shape of Tecnifibre rackets is a bit of a headache. It's a thing that I've talked about maybe too much in other reviews, and it's obviously a matter of taste. These are my personal opinions, but I feel like they're a bit too rectangular, and sometimes I lose my grips the way I'm used to playing with Wilson grip shapes, Babolat, and even Head. So for me, this is a bit too much of a rectangular shape. This can be fixed with some tape on the sides, even some lead tape on the sides if you want more weight in the handle. So that's one way to do it. One guy on my Patreon had already done that with the TF40, so I think this can actually work. And you can obviously also go to a professional customizer and they will fix you a grip in the shape you like, whether you're coming from Wilson, Babolat, Head, or some other brand. So you can solve these issues. It's still there though, I have to mention it. It's something that does not make me feel 100% comfortable in matches, even though I can play with it. Obviously I'm used to to testing different rackets and to just adjusting to it. But for me, still, this is a big adjustment in terms of the grip. So that's something to keep in mind, quite different from other brands on the market. And there's no trapdoor. So the trapdoor is the end of the end cap, where you want to maybe add some weight in the handle. So you can open it up, add some silicone, maybe some white or blue tack, and have a bit more handle weight at the bottom instead of wrapping lead tape around the grip. This is not available on Tecnifibre rackets. The only brand I think in my head right now that don't do this. I think it's a cost saving thing. I think you can create rackets cheaper if you don't have this, but still they should have gone the extra mile. I think we need a trapdoor in the end cap of the racket, the butt cap, the end cap. So those are two things that are very, very minor in some people's heads, but it's still there for me and a little bit of an annoyance when I get a Tecnifibre racket. But overall, like the playability of this frame, just from like enough control, enough spin, enough power. For me personally, like a control racket with some extra pop and spin potential, this was great. And I can really give it like a 2 thumbs up, Tennis Nerd approved. But keep in mind the grip shape, keep in mind the trapdoor. And I want to hear from you guys now, like, have you tried this? Do you want to try it? Is this something that interests you? I know that most tennis players really only want to consider Babolat, Head, Wilson, Yonex, right? So the main big players on the market, and I really urge you to consider other brands as well. Think outside the box. I mean, these are all excellent rackets from Yonex, Wilson, Head, and Babolat. I reviewed them all on the channel, and we write about them on tennisnerd.net. But these smaller brands, and Tecnifibre is not that small anymore, with so many strong players using their products. But still, they're small compared to these giants, right? And deserve some love for sure, because the products are excellent. And this one is perhaps my favorite Tecnifibre racket yet. I do like the T-Fight 305, but it has a bit too much of a swing weight in the head, and it's a little bit brassier in feel. I feel like this TF40 is just quite nice in feel, like this blade, like some pocketing in the string bed that I don't quite find in the T-Fight, although I know many players, and including pros, like the T-Fight a bit more. 18-19 pattern, what's not to like about that? But this 16-19 is not open enough to be like uncontrollable or give you a crazy launch, so you can definitely control it. And if you want that pinpoint precision, 18-20 is your friend. But if you like control rackets, I think this is something you should compare with the Blade, with the Radical, and this is actually my favorite right now of all these rackets. I feel like it has the balance of power and control the best for me personally. I mean, if you find comparisons, I would go Pure Strike, stiffer, more power, a little bit brassier feel, still good for players who want even more power. This is very close, but a bit softer in feel. When you go to Radical and Blade, they are more controlled, have a bit more flex, and yeah, this one just gives you a little bit more on the ball. Higher swing weight, of course, helps that, and you can always customize. But I was happy with this one because I didn't need to customize, and that's always a nice feeling, even if I have the tools, the Metro Tune in the back, lead tape, whatever, to do it. But it's a thumbs up, because I know many of you don't like to customize, and then you can get one that's really solid and can be played really high level. Like, give it to a pro, and I think they'd like this racket for sure. So, Tennis Nerd approved, thumbs up, Tecnifibre TF40 2024 16-19. Do you want more weight in the handle? Get 315. Do you want denser pattern gate? 18-20. This was perfect for me, but I know players who can consider those other options. They're otherwise the same in terms of mold. So that's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. Please check out tennisnerd.net every day for new content, pro player rackets, racket reviews, string advice, rackets for kids. We try to post as much as possible there. Tecnifibre TF40, great frame. Check that out as well. Maybe using our link to Tennis Warehouse. You find them in the description below. TNerd10 for 10% off on Tennis Warehouse Europe only. Sadly, Tennis Warehouse, they have some other rules that you can't give discounts, but please use my link anyway if you want to buy it, because I get a small commission. No matter what you buy, you don't have to buy this one. For sure, you can buy a pair of shoes as well. Have a nice day now, and don't forget to play some tennis.